Hello everyone, in this video tutorial we are going to create a GraphQL API for a blog site. GraphQL is an awesome piece of technology that gives power to the clients to choose to fetch what data they exactly need. This avoids overfetching or underfetching data. To give a small demo of what we are going to build in this project, so even though the posts, author and comments are living in separate table or separate resources, separate databases, GraphQL allows the client, the front end to query everything together in one go. So that's the magic. This is a completely a backend course with no front end involved. We are going to start from setting up the Express server and making the GraphQL work with it, and we're going to use MongoDB for storing the data. We're going to use JWT for authentication or authorization. Let's get started. Section 1. In this section we are going to install all the required packages, and we're going to create the Express application, web application, and we're going to configure .env. So I have opened VS Code here, and I'm going to drag an empty folder. I'm going to use integrated terminal. Okay, so this is the package we drag a folder we drag into the VS Code. Let's initiate the node package. So this command creates a package or JSON file with all the default values set up. This is fine for now. So this package or JSON file will keep track of all the dependencies and dev dependencies on the metadata about the projects of a node project. Let's go ahead and install the required packages. We are going to use the Express. So this is the web framework we are going to use on the top of the Node.js. It's much friendlier that to create a web application using Express compared to the Node.js. We need GraphQL. So this npm package is actual implementation of the GraphQL runtime in JavaScript. So we need that. Express GraphQL is GraphQL middleware, HTTP middleware, which makes these two packages work together. And we would need .env to store and retrieve environment variables. We'll see in a bit. And we need the JSON web token for authentication. So we are going to sign and verify JWTs using this package. It's going to be much simpler authentication system we are going to have in this project using JSON web token. We need the Mongoose package. So this is an ODM which basically maps the object we create in this project versus the actual document in the MongoDB. This is an object document mapper. So okay, so these are 6 dependencies we need for this project. While it is running, we also need a dev dependency, so that is noted by this -d. That's a package called NodeMon, which actually reloads the server whenever we update the scripts here, so which saves a lot of time in the development. Okay, the installations are done. I like saving my main file as server.js. Okay, so as the installations are done, let's go ahead and create our server. And let's have a sample route, which basically returns a JSON message. Hello world. And let's listen to a route. Oh, 3000. Okay, so that's all it takes to create a Express server. Let's create a script and run move on server.js. Start. Okay, so it says app running on port 3000. Let's go and check that. And it says message hello world. So this is the message we returned here. So the Express server is actually working, and I wanted to configure .env. Let's make this port number come from an environment variable. Port 3000, and we need to configure that. In order to configure, we need to import that and config. So if we choose to have this env file somewhere inside the folder, then we need to configure the path inside this. We don't need that right now. And once we have configured this, node env package will basically load these properties in the env file into process.env.port. So we can access the environment variables inside this object here. We'll also update this. So we are seeing this 3000. This 3000 is coming from the process.env. I think the font is small. Okay, so this the port, the 3000. Now we can access the inside the process.env. So we have our this. So the section 1 is done. So we installed the Express, installed all the packages required. We created the Express application, and we also configured .env. So let's say in the section 2. So before proceeding, let's initialize a git repository. So just git init. I've already done it, and we need to add .git ignore. We're going to ignore the .env file and then the node modules. So they are gone. So these are the things we did. So we installed packages, 6 packages, 6 dependencies and 1 dev dependency, and we created an Express server. Let's go ahead and commit that initial commit. In this section, we need to configure MongoDB. We are going to create a MongoDB cluster in Mongo Atlas. Just Google Mongo Atlas. And click the site and sign in. I have already signed in here. So click on create a cluster. AWS is fine, and create cluster. These are the default configuration for a free MongoDB cluster. These guys don't even ask any credit card or anything. So it says new clusters take between 1 to 3 minutes to provision, but it may take up to 5 to 10 minutes. We'll see again. So the cluster creation was ready. If it was running too long for you, just refresh the page and you just make sure that you have the green dot here, and we're going to connect. We just need a connection URI, and then we may even forget this interface. We can just deal with the collections and everything right from our project. So you can click this. It just allows the correct current IP address. We need to whitelist some IP address in order to access this cluster. I'm going to click this. So this makes allows anybody to connect. This is not safe, but just for the tutorial I'm doing this. You can do this option, and you have to create a username. Anything is fine. For the tutorial, we'll keep something safe for important databases. I'm giving the same. I'm going to delete this cluster after this tutorial. Create database user. Change your password, sure. So choose a connection method. We're going to connect with our application. So we are using Node.js. And just copy this. So this is the Mongo URI. We will deal with the whole thing. We need to update this password to what we gave the last screen. We can give any database name here. So copy this. Okay, so now we got the MongoDB URI, the database URI from the MongoDB Atlas. So we save that in the .env file. Let's go ahead and test the connection. So Mongoose provides us a function called connect, which gets the Mongo URI. So this one. I'm going to pass this function, export this function as a non-default one. We need to just import the function and then call that. That's all. Let's see if it works. Okay, it's not running. Oh, something went wrong. Untitled promise with the URL must be a string but got undefined. Okay, so actually what happened here is that we call this function before even configuring the .env. Yeah, so the MongoDB is connected now, but these are some warnings. We can add these options here to get rid of. There's one more thing. Okay, so we have connected to MongoDB without warnings. Let's go ahead and create our models. Our project comprises of 3 models: user, post, comment. So this mongoose.schema function. So already we use this mongoose.connect. This is the second function we are using from Mongoose, which is schema, which gets, if we say the hint, it asks for a schema definition and schema options. So let's just see the schema first. We need the username, which is a string, and password, email, display name. and we use mongoose dot. We need to export the model. Give it a name. Model asks for a string as the first parameter, and then the actual schema we created. So this is actually a valid mongoose model. We can go ahead and actually create user collection with the documents with all these properties, but we need to add. I wanted to show this as a bare skeleton of for every model, but we want some validations and everything. So instead of just giving the type, we can actually assign a JavaScript object which carries some the validations, etc. So here we need the username. Whenever a user tries to create a user object, we use a document in the data and the MongoDB. This mongoose, this model restricts if the username is missing. Same goes for the password also. The type string is obviously password is required, and also we need to have select as false. This is select property. Make sure that while retrieving the user document, the document won't contain the password. In this project, we are not going to encrypt the password. But even though if we encrypt, we don't need whenever anyone retrieves documents, we don't need the password. So we select false. Make sure it won't return. It is required, and also it should be unique. And we are also going to use regex validation here, which I copied from Stack Overflow. This match gets two values. It's an array. It gets two values. When the first one is the regex, second one is the error message. If the regex fails, please enter a valid email. The next one is the display name, which is a type string, which is also required. Okay, you don't need terminal open all the time. So the shortcut for you opening and closing the terminal, integrated terminal, is Control and tilde. Okay, so the schema, as we discussed, it gets the schema definition first as the first object, first parameter, and the schema option. So I'm going to pass a schema option called timestamps. So this options make sure that this document will keep track of, which basically includes additional properties called created at and updated at, which is very helpful. Whenever the document gets updated, it keeps track of the time. Okay, let's create all the models. I prefer typing instead of copy pasting. That gives some muscle memory. Maybe I will fast. For schema is done. The comment. Okay, so now we have our three models ready. The user schema has username, password, display name, and email with the validations, the email should be unique for each user, and then we also have a regex validation going on. The post has the author ID who wrote the post with a title and body. So we are not going to use any what you say is what you get editor or basically rich text support. We are not going to store HTML. We are just going to store a string for a title and a string for a body for this example. We also have timestamps enabled here, and we are exporting that as Mongoose model. And for comment, we have this is actual comment, a text, and then the who wrote the comment and who the post ID of the comment. We also have timestamps when we export it, and we will have another file to export all from one place. User, it's user. Okay, so that's all for section 2. So we have connected the database and we created 3 models using starting from the user, post, comment. We exported them from one place, and in the next section we will continue with creating the GraphQL schema, queries, mutations, types. Let's see in the next section. In this section, we're going to make the GraphQL work with Express. We're going to create the required files and then a skeleton schema file, and we're going to just make them work together before jumping into creating the queries and the types, queries and mutations. We're going to just establish this connection. Mutation, queries, types, and the schema. So let's start with the schema. Schema makes use of the actual GraphQL npm package. So okay, the skeleton of a schema, any schema, is import required stuff from GraphQL. First step, import queries and import mutations. We're going to define the queries and mutations inside this queries and mutations, and define query type. We're going to import all the queries defined inside this file, and we're going to combine them into one whole query type. Same goes for mutation type, which carries all the mutations we have declared. And module.exports, we are going to export GraphQL schema. Okay, let's go one by one. Right now we don't have any, so we are not importing anything. And a query type is, let's see, the query type is a GraphQL object type, just like how we install GraphQL schema. The query type is GraphQL object. So as you can see, if we have this setup ready like this, it will keep populating as we use in the script. That's very helpful. We don't have to do it separately. So any GraphQL object type takes a name first. Let's give query type and a description. Queries. and fields, which is going to be empty for now. We are going to import all the queries here, and then we'll just feed them inside. Let's do the same for the mutation type. Okay, yeah, right. So we have created the query type and mutation type. We need to export them inside, wrapped inside this GraphQL schema. So the skeleton schema required for a GraphQL is ready now. Now we need to feed the GraphQL inside our server file. And for that we need the GraphQL Express GraphQL. We're going to use the GraphQL HTTP. Let's use so the GraphQL is going to exist inside this route GraphQL, and instead of passing a request response function like this, we are going to use GraphQL HTTP. So the GraphQL HTTP gets a schema. And the first one is the schema, and then the second, okay, this is a ES6 syntax. We can do this graphical. The second one is graphical true. This enables us to this is actually an interface which is very helpful. Let's see. Okay, everything is working. Let's check that. Maybe let's change this message a bit, like something. Welcome. Go to /GraphQL. And let's go to GraphQL. Okay. Message tag. Expected token in JSON, position 0, syntax of an expected token and position 0. In fact, I was expecting some actually a different error here saying that the fields are empty, but it's saying something else. Okay, let's try using use here. I think it is trying get some HTML or something. That's what I can think of when I see this. Yeah. Oh, what? Use GraphQL. What else? Oh, okay. So I did a terrible mistake. I updated this get. Okay, let's use this use here. Yeah, so now we get the expected error, which says type query type must define one or more fields, query mutation type must define one or more fields. Actually, the Express GraphQL side, if we see, right, in the npm, it asks us to use get or post. So this is the function we are looking at, post. Somewhere I say, okay, yeah, so use get or post rather than use to configure route handler. If you want to show graphical element post, set graphical true on your get handler. But I did this, right? We started with the .get handler, but we got that error, the tag missing or something. Okay, let's just go with this use. The use is basically, I think it works the same way as get or post, but whenever we use we use a middleware. So this basically looks like a middleware to me with a route. So as this get didn't work, we are going with the use. That's all right. Okay. And you can see the section 3, we made GraphQL work with Express. Just to summarize what the changes we have done, we started with creating these files, mutation, queries, schema, and types, and we created a skeleton schema required to run this. From GraphQL, import required stuff from the GraphQL, required queries, import required mutations from mutation. Mutations, is it still working? Yeah, fine. Mutations, and we defined a query type using GraphQL object type, and we defined a mutation type with the same thing, and we exported this both wrapped around a GraphQL schema. And in the server, the difference is the changes we have made is we imported GraphQL HTTP from the Express GraphQL and the schema, and we use this middleware to route to GraphQL. This GraphQL true, this option allows us to access this interface. If we take this out, we won't be able to access this. Must provide a query string. So this works like actually hitting the actual API, so it won't give us the playground, GraphQL playground, if we not enable this option. And also we can delete this, it still works. And let's go ahead and commit. In this section, we are going to create types. Let's establish the skeleton. So a type in GraphQL is a model in Mongoose. We are actually going to create these 3 types here. Let's also import the models, user, post, comment. Okay, let's create the first type, which is the user type. The user type is, again, we are going to make use of the GraphQL object type, this one, and it, as we know, it takes name, description, and fields. User description, what, user type, and fields. Fields, right now we are using a function which returns an JSON object, a JavaScript object. We will talk about that. here we saw the fields are just an object, but here we are using a function to get this. We'll talk about that. So it will have an ID. This ID we did not have in this model. Let's just keep the user model open. So we just have username, password, emails, and everything, but not the ID. But when we create a document in the MongoDB, it's going to create an ID for us. So this is that ID. Next one is username. We're not going to use password here because we don't have to retrieve password. We get from when the user creates that account and when he logs in, whenever we deal with authentication. And authentication, we are actually going to use a express middleware as an express middleware using JSON Web Token, or the GraphQL is no thing. Won't do anything with authentication. So these three guys are actually going to be GraphQL string type. So our user type is ready. Now when we move on to the post type, there is a small twist, which is again the same GraphQL object type, which gets the necessary fields, and then the field we are going to use a function returning a JavaScript object. Let's do. So it is same till this point, but this is the turning point of the project, of this video, where we are going to see why we have to use GraphQL in the first place. a graph basically connects the nodes. It makes relevant data together. It keeps relevant data together, right? So a post type, for a post, the author and the comments are relevant types. So we create this author and we start with the type as we have done above, but we are going to have a resolver here. Resolve is a function. For the first two parameters are going to be parent and args, and it's going to return the author. It's going to return user.find. So this is the first time we are going to actually hit MongoDB. Parent.id. The parent, oh sorry, parent dot, let's open the post id. This document, this is a representation of the MongoDB document, and this document has author id. So that's what we are going to access from here. The parent is actually a document, MongoDB document, and we are accessing the author id from the document. We use the author id to query the user. This may look a bit weird, but this is what we are going to do again and again whenever we talk about this keeping relevant stuff together. We are going to do this again and again. In fact, we need to do this for the comments. Comments is actually a bit different. Okay, the ID is going to be an ID. The title is going to be a string. The body is going to be a string. But the author, I did a mistake here that it's not actually a string. It's actually this user type, right? Okay. Because, yeah, so it's not going to be a string. It's going to be this document again with ID, username, email, and display name. Same goes with the comments. Now we will see why we are using a function returning this stuff instead of the actual instead of just a plain. So maybe I'm confusing a bit, but hold on to me now in this part. In this comments, we need to give the type as comment type, which we haven't created. So when the JavaScript engine reads this line by line, when we come to this part, and if we just give comment type, it's going to throw an error saying comment type is not, even though if we have the comment type here, GraphQL object type. As I said, we keep doing this stuff again and again whenever we deal with the GraphQL. Comment type, and then we are going to have the fields, which is again a function returning a JSON object, JavaScript object. So this is like this comment type for an engine. When if we just have this as a JavaScript object, when the engine reaches down line by line, when it reaches this point, it's going to throw an error. If you have a function, it won't, because it just remembers the field as a function, and the function, the stuff inside this function happens in the execution time. So when it executes, the comment type will have been defined. So that is the point. We will see this in when this executes. I will change this into a object. It's going to throw an error. In the schema, which is not the case, because everything we are going to feed inside are already there defined, so that's not going to throw an error. I think that's clear. If not, just hold on, we will see that in action. So the author is just an user type, it's a document, but the comments is actually an array. So in order to use an array, we are going to use something like GraphQL list. I got to pass. It's a list of this type, and we're done with the post type. Let's move on to the comment type. This resolve function comes with a lot more parameters also, like a context stuff comes after this. We use that for authentication. For now, we are going to use only the parent and args. The arguments, I think we are not using arguments. Okay, so let's talk about these parameters for a bit. The parent parameter points to the actual post document in the MongoDB, the actual document, the object which comprises of all these fields: ID, title, author ID, this stuff as we discussed. And the resolve, inside this resolve, it allows access to the actual parent document and the arguments. The arguments we will use in the mutation when we try to query a particular user with an ID or something. So in there we will use the arguments, and the context, it comes after this, we will use in the authentication. So for comment, we need to relate the user and then the post. For resolve, we are going to use the post. So we have imported all these three models. As you can see, we created these models, we connected the MongoDB, and then we just use these guys as the broker. We forget about all the connection and everything. We just use them and talk with them. We forget about everything else, the connection, and that abstracts a lot of complexity. So this is user. Okay, user model dot find by id, and we're going to pass the parent dot user id. So this parent, this user id, this is the property we are using here, and the comment will come with the post parent dot this parent dot post id, this one. It has to be same. Whatever we have declared here, we have defined here, should be given here, because that's how we are saving in the actual document in MongoDB, right? Okay, I think the types are done. Let's export them. Comment. Are we not using comments? Post, comment. Okay. Here I made a mistake. I should have given comment, and it's not find by ID, but I just find. This accepts the ID and it returns one document, but the find, we are going to actually give a post ID. This is like a where condition in SQL. Find where post ID is equal to parent.id, wherever this ID is going to query all the comments for this post. We are not doing pagination yet, but this will work for this project. I think that's all. So in this section, we talked about the types. What is the type in a GraphQL, and we talked about the resolve, how this resolve connects the relevant data together, and that's it. Let's go and commit this thing. Let's see in the next section. In this section, we are going to take an aside, and we're going to see how to do authentication using JWT. Okay, so we need to create a utility folder here. We are going to create a function which receives a user object. So we're going to use this function exposed by the JWT package in order to sign a JWT token. JSON web token. So sign gets three parameters. First one is the payload. We are going to pass the user object as a payload. Second one is a secret or private key. We will have it here, and we will move that to the environment variable. The third one is the options, where we need the expires in options. We are going to pass 30 days inside it. This format is called ZITEMS. Let's see that. So this is the expire. These are the options we can pass inside this third parameter. First one is algorithm. We can change algorithm. Current one is HCS 256. Okay, we are passing in expires in, and we may even choose to pass not before, so that the token will be not valid before some certain period. We don't want any of this right now. I want to show this the format of this. So we are using this format. This 1D or 30D is also valid. We can mention a expiry date for a token in hours also. So it provides lots of ways to do this. Create. Okay. So I'm going to actually create a test route here in order to test just this one route, which is called auth test. We can give any name here. Here I'm going to import that create JWT method function, and then so from this route we are just going to return back this thing. So we just created this function here which receives an object. Anything, can be anything. It doesn't, we are not doing anything here, any validation. It doesn't matter right now. And the sign, it gets the payload, it gets a secret, and it gets expiry as a part of option. It creates, it's a synchronous operation, so there's no await or anything. It creates the token, it returns back. And for testing that, we are accessing the function from a test route, which is a get. We are going to hit this from the browser, and what I'm going to do is we're going to pass the user object. This user object, I'm going to just hard code it. Okay, let's start. So you're going to do, we don't have to do anything from here. Already I was doing some testing here. When we go to this route, it's going to give back us a long string. This is a JSON web token. And what happened is, I hit this, I did not send anything. I could have used Postman or anything to attach a body, but in order to make it simple, I'm just hard coding an user object here. The request hit this endpoint. This endpoint asked help. It just called this create JSON web token, JWT token. I think it's not grammatically correct, or I don't know, technically JSON web token. Okay, whatever. Please bear with that. We are passing a user object here. It went here. It cooked a token here and returned back, and we are the response basically returned a JSON. That's why we ended up here with a token. So go to this site, jwt.io. So these are the stuff we passed. It also added the issued at date and expiration date. So you can see, so it is issued at September 12 and the expiry date is October 12 because we gave the expiry date as 30 days. Yeah, so one more important thing. So how is this going to be a secure thing? It is not a secure thing. It's just encoded. If we choose to pass, for example, if we are going to just pass an unencrypted password, that is vulnerable. As you can also see that when I increase the payload size, the token size gets increased. So this is just encoded, it's not encrypted. The sign is not encrypting or anything, it's just encoding. So the data we put, the payload we put inside can be decoded anywhere if the person gets hold of the JWT. And how is this secure? For what we are using this? And a good example is that if we have our payload which says admin false, the user can, or the attacker can actually see the message here, but if he tries to change this to true, it actually gives back a token, right? But it's not a valid token. How do we know it's not a valid token? I said it has two parts in our authentication. One, we are actually signing a token, and another, we are going to create a middleware where we are going to verify the token, and there it will fail whenever the hacker, the attacker, or the user, mischievous user, tries to modify this payload. The JWT is going to throw an error. So let's see that. For that we're going to use middleware. reg.headers.authorization. So this is the header we are going to attach, or the server is going to expect the user to attach. So the standard is to actually use something like, so this is what we are going to hit. I am actually using a Chrome extension called mod header. Authorization bearer space this token, whatever it returned, but we are going to store this in a local storage, and we are going to send that in every request as authorization. We'll see that after finishing this method function. I'm going to split that. So what happens here is that this is an option chaining. Option chaining in JS, which is available in node 14 and above. Just make sure you have 14 and above. The 14 is, if you don't have 14 and above, go to the site and install the latest one, this current with latest features. I think the 14 gets to the long-term support this October. Active LTS start, so the version 14 will become LTS this October 27th. So go ahead and install this version so that this will work, the option chaining. Or else we need to use something like if rec.headers available, and then rec.headers.authorization available, and then so this and chain. This actually TypeScript introduced long back, and then now JavaScript is catching up. Verify equal to, we are going to use the JWT. So this is the second function we're going to use from the JWT. First one is the sign. It took three parameters. The verify takes the first one is the string, the actual token which we get from the client, which in the first place we sent when he registered or logged in. And the second one is the secret, the same secret we passed in here. We're going to send that here. Okay, so before touching this part, let's take this stuff and put it inside our environment files. 30 days. Okay. JWT secret. I hope it should work fine. Let's move on. So we got the token. It's just, we are just doing some string manipulation here. Here we are getting the authorization and splitting that, taking the second element. If there is nothing, we are going to at least pass an empty string, or else the verify is going to throw an error. So the first one is a token, second one is dot env dot jwt secret. That's going to verify. So what we're going to do is we are going to add an object to the request, so that everybody every route can actually can access the user. Let's just add this verified. With the verified object. Okay, so what we're going to do is in the server we're going to use before every route we're going to have a middleware. For that we need to also import that auth middleware, which was authenticate, and we're going to just pass that like this. Okay, from inside we need to call the next one, or else the action is going to be it's going to end here. So the request, every request comes to the script, it reads line by line, it comes here, we have added a middleware, right? So it's going to go to this authenticate function, it's going to do this stuff, and we are actually attaching something in the request also. And here if we access, it's going to, maybe let's just log request dot verified user. That should work actually. So that's the whole part of having a middleware. Let's see how JWT protects information or authenticates the user. For example, so this is the data we sent back to the user. One great thing about JWT is we can have this vital information like display name, email, username, and with every request. So they can always take the information from the token itself. When the user tries to if he tries to modify this data, he needs a secret key to verify the signature, and he may just guess it. And if we copy this, if we pass this, that's going to say verification failed. So the request came here, we took the token, we verified it, and it actually went wrong. Let's also try to have the error printed here. Which says invalid signature. So the attacker cannot change the data, even though the data is available, and we should not keep sensitive information in JWT. The information we send back to and fro from the client, from the server, cannot be changed. If it changes, when we verify, we are going to catch that if somebody did some malfunction. And one big catch is that JWT unfortunately has a similar method called decode. Now, you know that the user is not admin. I just updated this. I'm going to change this, updated this, and I just verify the signature using some random secret. I'm going to send this. Previously it failed. Now it says verification success. This is actually a problem. We should make sure that as a developer there is a chance that we may miss this, that yeah, okay, so I get the token, I verify that, and it's working fine, so we may just move on from this. But there are two functions, one is decode, one is verify. The decode does exactly what this site is doing. It's just decoding the token and getting the data from it. So we have to make sure that you should use this one. We should use the verify, not the decode. The decode is going to always decode no matter what. It won't verify the signature. I think that's all about the authentication. In the next section, we will go create the mutations. We start from the register, login, and we will use these two functions in the upcoming mutations. So to summarize, we created this one. We use this function from the JWT sign, and we are signing a token here. And then we use the verify to verify the token the client sends back. And we also saw that there is one more similar method which is dangerous to use. Don't use this. And we created a dummy route to just test this. We are going to just discard these changes from this file. We don't need this. And let's commit it. Let's see in the next section. In this section, we are going to do mutations. So we have imported the required stuff. So when we start using the exports, this guy the exports will get populated here automatically. Let's go with the register. GraphQL string. So when he registers, we are going to send back him the string arguments. You can just give this GraphQL string and email, password, display name. So everything are just strings. And the third one is an async resolve. which gets the parent resolve parent and args. These args are basically these ones we get from the request. So we're going to create a new user. Before that, we can destructure username, email, password, display name from args, and we'll pass the same into this user is the Mongoose user model. We're creating this. Save. So we save that, and we need to have the utility function now. /auth. It's called create JWT token, and we're going to create a token here equal to of user. So we are getting these arguments. We are using these arguments to create a new user. This user.save will actually go ahead and create a document in the MongoDB atlas. We're going to return back by stringifying the token. Actually, GraphQL is has very strict types. We can choose to actually have another type here called a token type, which we can pass, but let's just go with the GraphQL string. We are good with the register now. Let's export that. Okay, so now we are going back here and doing this. So it's working, it's running. Let's GraphQL message query type input type got undefined, username must be type input type. Okay, so this must be inside an object. Is that so? Yeah, so we'll do this for everybody. So it still needs a query to show us the schema. So I did not want to come here before doing these mutations, but I couldn't show the documentation here. So for the sake of seeing the documentation, let's go ahead and create the most basic query. For that also we need these setups. Again, as we saw here, we need the types, models, and GraphQL. Okay, let's get the most basic one, users. This will look very familiar. New GraphQL list. We used this while creating the comment type in the post, right? The GraphQL list, which is a list of comment type, which is of user type. So here, this is a list of user type. The user type we get from the uses. Resolve will carry the parent as the first parameter and args as the second one. We're going to return by saying user dot find. That's all. So this will bring all the, so this is a valid query. It has a type which is a list of a user type, and in the resolve it just returns back all the users. So we created one mutation and one query. So we can import the users from the queries and add it here. So now the graphical shouldn't complain. So yeah, so it's not complaining. We have query type. The documentation is great as a convenient part in GraphQL. The consumer of this API, GraphQL API, can go ahead and see what we expect. So the mutation type, the register asks for these particular properties: username, email, password, display name, and it just returns a string. Let's create our first user. Okay, it says the payload has to be a plain object. So basically it's not accepting this user as a plain object. So this is basically a Mongoose document. So let's see. So this is the first argument is the payload. Let's just wrap that inside another object. This is the shortcut of this. Duplicate key error collection. Okay, so what happened is that this problem is solved now. So when we previously tried, it created a document with the same email ID, and the same the email ID is unique, needs to be unique, right? So it created the document and it failed in this part by creating a token. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and delete that in my MongoDB atlas. So we already have the JWT email ID here. So I'm going to drop, we can actually drop the whole collection, because we did not create this in the first place, right? So when we try to create a document through Mongoose, here it looks for the table name, and if it's not there, it's going to collection, sorry, it look for the collection name, and if it's not there, it will create it. So let's go ahead and try it once again. Okay, so now we got the token back, but there is one problem that we don't need these slashes. Okay, so we are unnecessarily stringifying this create JWT token. This function is actually returning a string, so this is not necessary. I'll go ahead and delete that file also. Can delete this whole thing. It will get created if it's not there. Let's try again. 0. Okay. Okay, so now we have this JWT ready. JWT.io. Okay, so this is exactly our document here. So this outer braces is what we have given here. So we tried to give this part, but it did not accept that as a JavaScript plain object. So we wrapped everything inside another object, and it's working now. It's good. We have created one John Doe document. Let's create the login mutation and try to log in. So this is exactly the same like the previous one. You're going to return a string. The arguments are going to be okay, email and password. Both are going to be strings. The resolve method. First, let's try to access if there is any user available with that email ID. This is like a where condition in SQL. So we get the user, and the user has to be there. If there is no account associated with the given email ID, this object is going to be null. And one more thing is that the password he has given here passed in the arguments, and the password we have stored for the user inside the user document must match. The org start password not equal to user.password. So if any of these conditions fail, we are going to throw an error. And we are going to generate the token as above. Token is equal to create JWT token. We are going to pass the user. We are going to return the token. That's all for login. Let's pass it here. As you can see, the schema, as we have already created the schema front end, that's the skeleton of the schema already. It's easy to add new functionality to the project, right? Yeah, so now the login is ready, and our MongoDB is connected. We are getting some other deprecation warning also. We will see it. Okay, now the documentation should show the login. Mutation type. Now we have the login also. Let's try to log in with the same credentials. Login, email, password 2345. Okay, so first let's try with the email which is not there, so it gives invalid credentials because there is no email and associated email for any of the documents, and the user is null, so we threw this error, invalid credentials. Let's fix this, and let's give some other password. It is the same, and if we give the correct email ID and password, it's going to what 1 2 3 4 John Doe Gmail. Okay, is there anybody?
Org condition, user, ask that password, user that password. JDo email, Gmail, okay, email, password, 1 2 3 4 5 4. Not equal to R, password, not equal to user that password. Okay, let's try to log what we get here. Let's try to log in. So do you have email, JDo@gmail.com?
Oh, okay. So we are not including the password here. You remember we in the post document we have given like select false, which is still necessary. We don't want the password to be returned, but for this particular for this action we need to actually include the password. For that we need to can actually change this select, and we have to pass to add, we have to ask to add the password to it. Okay, still okay, we have the password, this is the same. Okay, see, okay, I did it, there will be mistake here. It has to be find one. The find actually returns the whole array, so it looks for user.password, but actually user is an array of this mongoose objects. So the find one should return one object so that we can access this user.password. Yeah, okay, so now the login is successful and we have got the token and we have all the information inside it required. So the login is done. So in this section we have added the register and login mutation, and we have our first query. Okay, maybe let's go ahead and try this. Users. So right now we have only one user, and let's query that. Query users ID, username, display, email. I think that's all. Yeah, okay. So in this section we have successfully created our first query, which is that's all, 12 lines of code, and we have two mutations, one for registration and one for login. And we imported this thing, we had this stuff ready with this empty curly braces. We can import any number of queries and mutations, and we can just keep populating them. And we updated this one because it didn't work, it didn't accept the mongoose object as a plain JavaScript object. In this section we are going to create queries and mutations for the post type. So before that, in the last section we forgot to create the query to retrieve one user. We're going to use find by id, pass the args.id. We can also have description here, that's helpful in the documentation. Okay. So now we have two kinds of queries, users and user, and we have description also here. Let's try the user query. ID is this one. Okay, so the user query is working. So before moving on to the to create posts and mutations for the post type, queries and mutations for the post type, we need to make sure that only the authenticated, the logged in users are allowed to post, to create new posts. So for that, we already have this middleware ready. We are going to import that and it's called authenticate, and we need to have this before all these routes. So this function receives the request, it gets the token, it verifies it, it attaches a property, the whole user object as a property to the request. So that allows us to use. So in these routes, in the query, in the mutations, we are going to look for this verified user property in the request. If it's not there, then he's not logged in. Let's create the add post mutation, which is of type post type. Previously we were just returning the string. And we're going to get the arguments title, which is a GraphQL string, and a body GraphQL string. And our resolve method will be having the parent args, and here we can, this is the order of the parameters are important. The first one is always the parent, the post. If we log this parent, it's going to log the post document. The arguments are these guys, which we received in the mutation. And the third one is the context. So the authenticate function, when it runs, when it attaches the verified user, we can access that from the context, the third object. If there is no verified user, we're going to throw new error. If it's not, we are going to go ahead and create a new post. It's going to work like how we did the registration here. We're going to just pass the arguments inside. Author ID, title is args.title, body is args.body, and we're going to return the post.save. So that's a promise, and this should work. Before creating the post, we need to log in. So we have only one user here. Let's log in with his credentials. So this is the JWT, and I'm using a Chrome extension called Chrome mod header. So install it, but you have to make sure that once you are done developing, authorization bearer space this token. So once you are done with this development, if you still have this mod header with this authorization or anything, that's going to screw up with some sites when you visit, because it is basically there in every request. So make sure after development you come here and even disable the extension. So we have our JWT, we copied that, we put that inside authorization. Let's do it. Let's create our post. Okay, post validation. Okay, something went wrong. Post validation failed. Author ID is required. Okay, so this author ID is not coming here. Okay, so so we have wrapped this user inside an object. So when we try to access like verified user dot this ID, we are getting an error. So actually it's like the ID is living inside a user object. Okay, so instead of doing here, let's do it in the middleware. Okay, so here we're verifying that, and we have to assign this one. Let's try it once again, and this won't affect this won't create any new documents here, because the validation stopped the document from getting created. We don't have a post collection here yet. It's running. Let's try again. Okay, so the document is here. So B9E, so he's the user we logged in with, and B9E, and that is the author ID. And the good part is we did not get this input from the client but the JWT, which was created by the server. So it is secure, a lot secure than relying upon the client. Okay, so now we have the add post. Let's go ahead and create the queries, just like how we did the user and post. It's going to be pretty similar. Post equal, second GraphQL list of post type, and let's have a description also. Retrieves list of posts, and a resolve function. We don't need, actually we can skip the arguments on the parent and the arguments. Post.find. Let's do the same for post. The type is plain. Type ID is going to return only one post, and we need to pass the ID as parameter. And the resolve, we need to have the arguments. Actually we can name anything here. Instead of parents, we can, if we are not using that, we can even put a dash here, but the order is important. I think we are good. So once we have this setup, you can say it's very simple to keep creating queries and mutations. Let's retry so that we can see the updated documentation here. queries. We are not seeing the post one. That's strange. Retrieve list of posts. The schema would happen. Post. Okay. I entered post 2 times. Okay. So now comes the big reveal. We are going to look at the posts. Oh, okay. Query. Posts. Can import the. You can see the ID, title, body, and the documentation helps here a lot, right? The post, which gives us all this stuff. The author comments, we haven't created any, but this is the magical part. These two stuff, the author, and we can just keep going inside ID. So we set up this in the type. In this type, we have a resolve method for the author, which connects the the user the user data into the post. What do we have? Email, display name. For example, we usually don't need the email, but we may need to display the display name along with the post. Yeah, it's great, right? Let's also quickly test the post. So this is not possible in a normal REST API. If we want to combine two resources, we can do it in one API, one endpoint, but that is fixed. Right? If you want a different response, we need to have different APIs, or that's going to be messy. We can have like conditions, what to return back, but now this is the front end, and the front end decides what information it needs. If it needs an email ID, again, for some reason, it can have. So whatever data we have, we can do it. We can have our authorization back. I think I cannot cover that in this video, but let's see. We'll do a bit of authorization using this JWT while updating the post. So who can update the post? Only this guy can update the post. John Doe can update the post. So we will do that authorization, but let's say we can explore more. Let's quickly test the post and move on. This is the post ID. So the post returns an array, as we have given here. It's an array of posts. This is not it's a single instance of a post. So there we have our post and post created. So in the next section, okay, let's quickly recap. So what we have done in this section is that we imported the authenticate middleware. We used the middleware. Important part is we have to include it before all the routes. And in the mutation, we added a add post, where we simply created a post using this data. Queries, we created user, post, and post, which are simple type description, arguments, and a resolve with a mongoose function. In the schema, so this is our main script, right? So in the schema, we imported the newly created mutation and the queries, and we just added that into the root type, the root query type, and the root mutation type. In the auth middleware, we found a problem that we were trying to access verified user dot id, but it was not working. So it was we were the one who added the user. We wrapped up the user into an object, so we need to access like this. We just updated that. So in this section, we are going to create the mutations. and the queries for the comments is going to be very similar to what we did last time. We're going to add comment. So it works very similar to this one. The verified user is fed inside by the middleware we have. User ID we get from the verified user dot ID. We can write it in a very much simpler way, but it's fine. Let's go ahead and test this out. And before that, we need to add this to the root schema. Okay. Let's refresh and see the documentation. Add comment and post ID. Mutation. Add comment. There is some spelling mistake here. First comment and post ID. We'll copy from here. Oh, comment is not defined. Okay. Mutation. This comment they're talking about. The model, we did not import the model. I thought it will. Let's try it again. We did not create any document yet because we did not import the Mongoose schema in the first place. Let's try again. Okay, yeah, add comment is working. Let's go ahead and create two queries also. Maybe let's get lazy and comments, ID, comment, post, ID, body, title, the title and body. It doesn't matter, but aesthetics. Comment is not defined again, okay? Should work now. Okay, here we have our first comment on our first post. So in this section, we created the mutation and the queries for comments, and we added to the schema and things are working. In the next section, we are going to see the update post, and there we are going to see how the authorization we have in our how to do authorization through our JWT. In this section, we're going to create update and delete for our posts and comments. Let's start with the update post. And we're going to check if our middleware feeds the verified user into the request and can get that from this context. The third, we can destructure that from the context from the third parameter, and if it's not there, then he did not provide a token. He did not basically get authenticated. And if you can see, we did not actually kick him out or anything here. This middleware is not blocking any request. It just attaches and it's just passing the next request to the next guy. So he is the middleware. He authenticates. If he is authenticated, he attaches the verified user and it just passes to the next one. This route, and we are accessing that from the mutation. So if it's not there, we're going to, if the verified user is not attached, we can safely throw an error saying unauthenticated, and if not, we're going to do this: find by ID, find one. And because that's the reason for using find one with update, because as the first argument we are going to give two things. It's not just ID, we are not just finding with ID but with author ID also, which we can get from the verified user dot d. Next thing is the thing we need to document, we need to change. For simplicity, we are like changing both the stuff, but we can like have a condition here and cook this object depending upon what is being sent, or if it's null, but it's fine here. As a third object, we need to pass some options. The true is to ask the MongoDB to create a new document with a new thing. I'm not very sure about it, but there is one more thing called run validity is true. That is to validate, run the validations we have in the post schema, and we need to make this as async. Okay. If there is no post found, post updated, if it's not there, we are going to throw another error because this condition did not get satisfied. We are not just allowing, so this condition is authorization we are doing here. We are not just going ahead and updating the, we are not just building the client and going ahead and updating the post ID he asked us to update. We also have another condition saying that the author ID of this post, of this particular post we are fetching, we are finding, should have the author ID as the verified user.id. This verified ID, the object is cooked by the server. So this is authorization technique we are using. We are going to use the same thing for update and delete also. We can pass an error, throw an error saying no post with the given ID found for the author. Nothing. And finally, let's return the post updated. Let's test it out. Refresh. Document should have that. A dog has gone mad, I think. Update post. and we are returning back the post, so we can get all this stuff. I think that's all. And the token is important. We are actually okay, maybe let's pass the invalid token first. I just deleted E from the beginning. Unauthenticated. Where did we pass unauthenticated? Okay, so the middleware could not actually verify the token and could not create a verified thing, so it just threw an error. The JWT verify through an error, and we caught here, and we did not attach anything, so it says unauthenticated. Let's put it back. We will also try it with another JWT. We will create another create another user. We will log in with him. We'll also do that. Okay, so it's updated. Initialize first post. This is our first post, and when we refresh, body content updated, first post updated. Okay, let's quickly create another post, and then let's go on to delete that post. The post to be deleted, body doesn't matter. Now we have another post here. Let's work on delete post mutation. Dog. Delete post on the, okay, wait a minute. Delete post as well. Orgs post ID graph string. Cons post is equal to await post dot find one and delete, and we're going to use the same condition here. The first, we're going to pass the ID orgs.id and author ID verified user.id. I think it should work. Post deleted. If there is no post deleted, I'm going to throw an error. No post with and we can return a string here, post deleted. Let's try that. Let's copy this ID. This is the one to be deleted. You can delete anything, but mutation, delete. It's not a delete post, mutation. Okay, I added that to the query. Actually, even now it won't give us the delete post until we refresh, but that's not a problem. We can go ahead and create that. Keep refreshing to get the autocomplete, which is simple, which makes things simple. Delete post, and it's going to get the post ID, which is, oh, awesome, the post ID, and we're going to return back nothing. We just gave that as a string, so it will just come back. You don't have to do this. And as I said, it's good to have a custom type instead of just returning a string. Instead of just returning a string, we can have a type for the responses. That if we do this, we can actually, like this user type, we can create something called a response type or something, and we can have fields inside it. Like, that will be much more better, but let's just go with this to maintain the simplicity. Mutation type, there is something called a state post, which returns a string. No post with a given ID found for the author. Author ID is same for the both. Let's try to log in once again. And our password. Let's also log this one. This shouldn't be happening. In the delete post, we got this. Find one and delete. We have author ID. Author ID. These are fine, but let's log the verified user here. Okay, actually we should also have this check. I forgot to have this. So if the token has expired or something, it's going to throw unauthenticated. I know we are giving 30 days. It shouldn't have been expired, but copying. And let's do do the delete post once again. It's going to get the post ID. Okay, so it still says that. Verification success. So we have the right verified user here, and we did not get stuck here, but we did not get this unauthenticated error, but somehow we are having this problem. Okay, so argument didn't have an ID but a post ID. So this actually is undefined. So MongoDB tried to find a document with undefined and the verified user which won't exist. So now it should work. So as it failed, the document is still there. So we can retry that. It should work. Post deleted, and instead of going ahead, let's query the posts ID, title, body, and we have only one. Let's quickly do the same for the comments also. I'm going to type this out, or I'm not. It looks daunting to me. Post. I'm using Control D to select everything with this post spelling. Delete post ID, post. Okay. Now we have another problem, which is I made everything in small, in non-capitalized. So copy pasting has its problems. Comment deleted. What else? Comment ID. Update comment. Here we need caps. Delete comment. Fields. Let's create some more comments. Add comment, which takes a comment, unwanted comment, or problematic, or controversial comment, and the post ID, we have this one. Failed to fetch. comment type is not defined. Happens all the time. Shoes. Okay, so we have added another comment. And let's try to update that first. We don't need everything. Update comment is asking for all this stuff. Okay, I think that's all. So right now it's showing some error. If I refresh it, it's going to go away. Let's do this. No comment with the... So I attribute all these problems with copy pasting. No comment with the given ID found for the author. But it's a good learning experience. Comment updated, comment updated, commented find out not update. So args author ID. So you should be now. So it's very hard, right? So the post had author ID, the comment has user ID. I did not change that, and that caused this problem. Same should go here. So maybe I'm telling the problems with copy pasting. Okay, so actually it returned the it should have updated. It is still there. Oh. What? Update. Where am I saying? User ID. Title body. Okay. So this is getting frustrated. I should have clearly typed this out. Less controversial comment. Okay, you got it. And let's delete that. Delete has takes only the ID and it returns back only a string. It should delete it. Unknown argument ID on the field. Delete document. Okay, it asks for comment ID. post deleted, and it's not, shouldn't be here. So yeah, so there we have. In this section we created update, post, update, delete, and then we also saw some important lessons about copy pasting. It screws things a bit, and finally it's working. I think that's all about the project. Yeah, thanks for watching. Let's comment this. Created update and delete for posts and comments. Post and comment. Yeah, thank you for watching.